What if missing the most important job interview of your life was the best decision you ever made? She stopped to help a stranger on the street, Iristos costing her the one opportunity she had worked years for. But what happened next would rewrite her entire future. Stay with us, because this isn't just a story about kindness. It's about what happens when the world decides to reward it. The city roared around her like a living machine, engines snarling, footsteps pounding, voices blending into a chaotic hum as Maya raced down the sidewalk, clutching her worn leather folder like it contained her entire future. Because, in a way, it did. Her heels struck the pavement hard. Her breath came fast. Her only decent blazer clung to her damp skin as the summer heat rose too early and too unforgiving. Her phone buzzed in her hand. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes left to reach the skyscraper downtown. The interview she had dreamed about through every overnight shift, every skipped meal, every time she told her little brother they'd be okay when she wasn't sure they would. The streets blurred past her, men in suits sipping lattes, women on Bluetooth calls, no one noticing the panic in her stride, the desperation in her eyes. She turned the final corner, the tower now in sight, a glass beacon of possibility gleaming against the sky, when suddenly everything stopped. Just 20 feet ahead, an elderly woman crumpled to the ground beside a cracked crosswalk, her cane spinning out of reach, purse contents scattering like fallen leaves, and people, so many people, just stepping around her like she was debris. Maya froze mid-stride, heart slamming against her ribs, her mind screaming, "You can still make it," her eyes flicking between the fallen woman and the ticking clock. 8:49, but her feet moved before her brain did, dropping to her knees beside the woman, gently touching her trembling shoulder, voice soft but steady. "Ma'am, are you hurt? I'm here. You're not alone." The woman winced, eyes wide with pain. "My hip, I can't move." As Maya gathered her scattered groceries, knelt on the hot sidewalk, used her own jacket to cushion the woman's head, waved off the annoyed honks from nearby cars, ignoring the sting of judgment from passers-by. She called 911, gave clear instructions, stayed until the ambulance came, held the woman's hand as paramedics lifted her gently, and only when the doors shut did Maya glance at her phone again. 8:56. Her stomach twisting, a lump rising in her throat. She ran. She ran like everything she had depended on this moment, hair flying, lungs burning, heart thundering as the tower came into view again, glass doors looming. But when she burst through them at 9:11, the receptionist didn't even look up before saying, "I'm sorry, interviews closed at 9. Maya stood there, soaked in sweat and silence, staring past the lobby desk into the elevator she would never ride, into the opportunity that had slipped through her fingers not because she wasn't ready, but because she chose kindness when the world expected speed. She whispered a "thank you anyway," turned back into the heat of the day, and walked away, not knowing that miles across the city, someone had seen everything, and her story was only just beginning. The sidewalk felt heavier beneath her feet as Maya walked away from the tower, the weight of disappointment pressing against her shoulders like a storm cloud she couldn't outrun, her folder limp in her hands now, the resume inside no longer a symbol of hope, but a reminder of everything she had just lost. The sun burned down with no mercy. The streets bustled as if the world hadn't just turned its back on her, and her reflection in the shop windows? Tired, damp, eyes wide with disbelief. Looks like a stranger who had gambled everything and come up empty. She didn't cry, not yet. Not until she reached the corner where the noise faded slightly and the crowd thinned, and only then did she stop, press her back against the cool brick of an old cafe wall, and let the tears come. Not loud or theatrical, just silent, exhausted drops sliding down her cheeks as she stared up at the sky and whispered, "I was so close." She had rehearsed answers for weeks, memorized the company's history, studied her elevator pitch like scripture, and none of it mattered now because she chose a human being over a schedule, and the world had no column for that kind of decision. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A reminder from her calendar interview with Marlowe and Gray, 9:00 a.m. She silenced it. No use. By the time she got home, the hallway of her apartment building smelled like burnt toast and damp carpet, and the elevator was out again, so she climbed the 4 flights with legs that felt heavier with each step. Inside her, 1-bedroom unit, the AC rattled, the sink dripped, and the fridge hummed its lonely tune as she set her folder down on the kitchen counter beside a stack of unpaid utility bills. In the back room, her younger brother Devin coughed in his sleep, curled beneath a thin blanket, and she peeked in to check on him, brushing his hair from his forehead, her heart twisting with guilt she didn't deserve. She changed out of her interview clothes, put on the same faded shirt she always wore when cleaning houses, then sat at the edge of her bed with her hands folded tightly, staring into the silence. I did the right thing, she whispered to herself like a question. Didn't I? But doubt was cruel, and it crept in quickly, wrapping around her thoughts like vines choking sunlight, whispering that maybe she was foolish, maybe she had ruined everything, maybe kindness wasn't worth the cost. And yet, across the city, on a marble balcony overlooking the skyline, an older woman rested in a wheelchair, a soft blanket across her lap, eyes closed as a breeze kissed her cheeks, and beside her stood a sharply dressed man holding a phone with a paused video on the screen. Is this the girl, he asked quietly? Eleanor Sterling opened her eyes and looked at the frozen frame. Maya was kneeling on the sidewalk, shielding herself from the world. That's her, she whispered. Find her. And the game, though Maya didn't know it yet, had just changed completely. Morning came with no mercy, a thin strip of sunlight creeping across Maya's floor like a silent reminder that life moves on, even when your heart feels stuck. She rose before the alarm, muscles aching from sleep that barely counted, her body moving out of habit while her mind stayed trapped in the loop of yesterday's what-ifs. The missed interview echoed in her chest louder than her own heartbeat, but there was no time to dwell. Not when the rent was due in 4 days. The power bill sat unopened on the table, and Devin's medication needed refilling by Friday. She dressed quickly, jeans worn thin at the knees, a polo shirt slightly faded, tied her hair back, and checked on her brother, who offered a sleepy smile from under his blanket. Did it go well? He asked, voice rough from coughing. She paused, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Not exactly, but I'll figure something out. She handed him his inhaler, packed him a simple breakfast, then grabbed her cleaning tote and slipped out into the noise of the city once again. Her first stop was the office building on 9th Street, where she scrubbed glass doors and emptied trash cans before the suits arrived. No one looked her in the eye. They never did. From there, it was the law firm uptown, polishing floors and wiping windows while paralegals chatted about weekend plans she couldn't imagine affording. On her lunch break, she sat alone behind the maintenance stairwell, unwrapping a sandwich she couldn't finish and staring at her phone screen, still empty of messages, still void of any callbacks. The rejection burned deeper than she wanted to admit. Not because she felt entitled to the job, but because she knew she had earned a chance, and life had yanked it from her hands in the exact moment she chose to help someone else. By sunset, she dragged herself up the stairs of her apartment building again, legs shaking, hands raw from hours of scrubbing. She walked in, dropped her tote by the door, and slid down against the wall, head tilted back, eyes closed, breath shallow. Devin came out with a blanket and quietly laid it across her knees. "You're doing amazing," he whispered. Even if the world doesn't see it, she pulled him into a hug, holding on a little longer than usual, because right now, he was her only anchor in a world that felt like it was determined to drown her. And yet, miles away, in a sleek black sedan gliding through downtown traffic, a young woman in a navy suit tapped her tablet screen. Maya's face now pulled up beside a list of her known addresses, her work locations, and a short note subject, Maya Whitaker. Observation phase complete, awaiting next instruction. From the other end of the call, Eleanor Sterling's voice came clear and resolute. She chose someone else's pain over her own ambition. I've waited years to find someone like that. Bring her to me. No red tape, no agents, just kindness. Let's see what it can still build in this world. The next morning, Maya's phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter. Just a soft vibration that would have gone unnoticed if she hadn't been pouring the last of the cereal into a bowl for Devin, measuring it carefully so he wouldn't ask why there wasn't more. She glanced at the screen, expecting a spam message or maybe a reminder to pay a bill she couldn't afford, but instead saw something she hadn't expected in days. Unknown number, are you Maya Whitaker? I believe we met at a crosswalk. Her breath caught, the spoon frozen midair. She replied cautiously, yes. Who is this? A moment passed. Then another message, I'd like to thank you in person. You change more than you realize. She stared at the words, heart thudding, unsure if it was real or just another strange twist in a week already filled with too many disappointments. She didn't respond. She couldn't, because she had to rush to her next job, and because hope felt like a dangerous luxury. But the messages didn't stop. Later that day, while she was scrubbing the floor of a dentist's office, her phone buzzed again. We've arranged a car. No obligation. Just one conversation. You deserve to be seen. She almost laughed. A car. She had walked 5 miles in worn-out shoes this week. What kind of person sent cars to janitors? She tucked the phone away, ignored it, and kept working. But that night, as she walked home, tired and soaked from a sudden rainstorm, a sleek black vehicle slowed beside her on the curb. The back window rolled down, and a warm, poised voice said her name, Maya Whitaker. The woman inside wore navy and grace like a second skin. She smiled gently. Please don't be alarmed. I work for Eleanor Sterling. Maya blinked. The name meant nothing at first. Just a syllable. But the woman continued. She was the one you helped. She remembers everything, and she's asked to meet you. Maya hesitated. Her mind raced. This had to be a mistake, a scam, a setup. But something in the woman's eyes, something honest, steady, grateful, pulled her forward before fear could drag her back. She opened the door, sat down inside. The leather smelled like new beginnings. The city blurred past the tinted windows as the car glided forward, silent and sure. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't know what would happen. All she knew was that, for the first time in a very long time, someone had come looking for her. And it wasn't because she owed anything. It was because she gave. The gates opened slowly, silently, like the entrance to another world. And as the car rolled forward onto a stone path, framed by manicured gardens and silver-lit fountains, Maya sat frozen in the back seat, heart thudding in her chest, louder than the rain now fading on the windows. The estate before her looked like something torn from a fairy tale. Timeless, grand, impossibly still. And she couldn't stop staring at the windows, wondering which one belonged to the woman whose life she'd touched in the span of a heartbeat. The car came to a stop, and the door opened before she could process what was happening. The woman in the navy suit stepping out with effortless grace, turning back just once to say, she's waiting. Maya stepped out cautiously, her shoes brushing gravel far too fine for someone like her, and walked up the steps feeling like she was drifting through someone else's dream, the doors opening before her hand could knock. Inside, the air smelled of fresh roses and old wood, warmth and history blending into something that wrapped around her shoulders like an invisible embrace. And there, beneath a towering chandelier that sparkled like captured starlight, sat Eleanor Sterling, the woman she had helped, now dressed in soft pearl gray, hair brushed back, eyes piercing and impossibly alive, seated in a sculpted wheelchair that looked more like a throne than anything that belonged to a hospital. Maya froze in the doorway, unsure whether to step forward or run, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, words evaporating from her tongue. Eleanor's voice broke the silence first, soft but commanding. So many people walked past me that day. Some even stepped over my groceries, but not you. Maya swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't do it to be thanked. Eleanor smiled gently. That's why you're here. She gestured to the seat across from her. Come, sit. Let me look at the girl who made the world pause. Maya obeyed, still unsure if she was dreaming or awake, her entire body tense as if afraid to move too quickly and break the illusion. I built this place from nothing, Eleanor began, her gaze distant. I know what it's like to be overlooked, underestimated, forgotten. That day on the street, I was testing something. Humanity, maybe. Definitely. I go out once a year. No guards, no warning. I watch, I wait, and when you knelt beside me, not for recognition, not for gain, but simply because you could. I knew I'd found someone rare. Maya's eyes filled before she could stop them. I didn't do anything special, she whispered. Eleanor leaned forward. That's where you're wrong. In a world that rewards selfishness, you choose compassion. You didn't just help me, Maya. You reminded me why I started all this. She slid a folder across the table, the paper thick, embossed with gold, the Sterling Foundation, fellowship application, pre-approved. This is yours, if you want it. Full mentorship, housing, education stipend, and a place at the table where decisions are made to change lives. Maya stared at it, hands trembling, throat tight. Why me? Eleanor smiled, not gently this time, but fiercely, because when the world asked who you were, you answered with kindness. And now it's time the world answers back. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't feel like a girl running to catch up. She felt like the world had finally stopped long enough to see her. The following Monday, Maya stood in front of the towering glass building bearing the emblem of the Sterling Foundation, her reflection trembling in the polished doors, her heart pounding not from fear, but from the sheer disbelief that she was truly here, no longer cleaning lobbies like this, but walking into one as a name on the registry, a name that someone powerful had spoken with pride. She adjusted the simple blouse Eleanor's assistant had helped her pick out, still second-guessing every thread, every step, but the receptionist greeted her with a smile that made her chest ache. "We've been expecting you, Miss Whitaker." The elevator ride was silent except for the low hum of possibility, the floor numbers blinking upward like steps on a ladder she never imagined she'd be allowed to climb. And when the doors opened, she stepped into a sun-drenched workspace alive with purpose. Young professionals in tailored clothes, innovation crackling through the air like electricity. And at the center of it all, a woman in a crisp white dress turned from the window and extended a hand. "Welcome to your first day," she said, and Maya tried to steady her shaking fingers as she took it. The hours passed like seconds and eternities all at once. Meetings she couldn't believe she was included in, conversations where her opinion wasn't just acknowledged, but asked for, staff members introducing themselves not with condescension, but with curiosity. She took notes until her fingers cramped, listened harder than she'd ever listened, absorbed every corner of this new world like oxygen after being underwater for too long. And yet, every time someone smiled or said her name, a small voice inside her whispered, "Don't mess this up. Don't forget where you came from." But another voice, quieter, stronger, answered back, "This is who you are now, not because of luck, because of choice." At lunch, she sat alone by instinct until a young woman named Clara from the communications team plopped down beside her without hesitation and said, "Everyone's talking about you. You know, not the viral video, but the real you, the one who shows up early, the one who listens." Maya blinked, surprised. "They are?" Clara laughed. "Of course. You have no idea what it means to have someone here who didn't come from privilege but still carries herself like she belongs." After lunch, she was called into a private conference room. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, a file open in front of her, her expression unreadable. "Sit, Maya," she did, slowly, nervously. "You're doing well," Eleanor said plainly. "But I didn't bring you here to be impressed. I brought you here to prepare you." She slid a contract across the table. "This is for a 6-month mentorship. You'll shadow me, learn what this world looks like from the top, and when it's over, you'll decide what kind of legacy you want to build." Maya's breath caught. She didn't even touch the paper. "Why me?" she asked again, almost afraid of the answer. Eleanor leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Because most people step over what's inconvenient. You didn't. That makes you dangerous in the best possible way." And just like that, Maya realized this wasn't just a second chance. It was a beginning far bigger than anything she had ever dared to imagine. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into something deeper, something sacred. As Maya moved through the gleaming halls of the Sterling Foundation, not as a shadow, but as a rising light, her confidence no longer stitched together with fear, but with experience. Every meeting sharpening her voice, every project proving that intelligence didn't need a pedigree, just purpose. She shadowed Eleanor from morning briefings to late-night donor calls, absorbing lessons that weren't written in any textbook. And how to read silence in a boardroom, how to make people lean forward with just a sentence, how to negotiate without ever raising your voice. And in the quiet hours between, Eleanor taught her more than leadership. She taught her how to own her space, how to protect her dignity without apology, how to walk into rooms that weren't built for her and rearrange the walls. At home, everything changed in echoes. Devon's health improved now that they could afford proper care. Their apartment was warmer, safer, and slowly filling with life again. Books, laughter, the smell of real dinners instead of reheated leftovers. Maya began helping her neighbors too, slipping envelopes under doors when someone was behind on rent, tutoring kids in the lobby after work, never announcing it, just showing up like someone once had for her. And yet, she never stopped showing up early at the foundation, never stopped asking questions, never stopped holding on to the humility that had gotten her here in the first place. One afternoon, Eleanor handed her a sealed envelope. "This is your first independent assignment," she said, eyes glittering with both warning and faith. "You'll oversee a new initiative. It's employment grants for women re-entering the workforce. You'll meet with policymakers, interview applicants, and decide who gets funding. No filters, no scripts. This one's yours." Maya took the envelope with trembling hands, not because she doubted herself, but because she understood the weight of what trust really meant. And so, she led, quietly at first, then louder, then undeniably. She stood in front of panels, in conference halls, in media interviews where people expected a name with more polish, more pedigree. But got Maya Whitaker instead, fierce and grounded and radiant in her truth. She didn't pretend to be someone else. She told her story openly, honestly, how she missed an interview to help a stranger and still found her way to a better future. And the world didn't just listen, it leaned in. And in the silence after every speech, every project, every victory, Maya would close her eyes for a second and remember that morning at the crosswalk, the sound of rushing cars, the cracked eggs on the pavement, and how a single moment of compassion had become the key that unlocked everything. She hadn't just changed her life, she was building the road for others to walk through behind her, and this time, no one would be left on the sidewalk. But with recognition came resistance, and the higher Maya climbed, the more some began to whisper. Not because she had failed, but because she had succeeded too quickly, too boldly, too honestly. At first, it was subtle questions in meetings phrased like compliments. "You're impressive for someone without formal experience." Or, "It's refreshing to see someone like you at the table." She smiled through it, brushed it off, until it grew louder, thicker, more public. An article calling her Eleanor Sterling's charity case. An anonymous donor questioning if her promotions were emotional gestures rather than earned. Maya read the words alone in her office one night, the city lights blinking beyond the glass, her hands gripping the edges of the desk as if the world was trying to shake her loose. Doubt returned like a ghost, whispering in her ear that maybe they were right, maybe kindness could only get you so far before power demanded a different language. And then came the message. The very man who had rejected her at the Marlowe and Gray interview months ago had seen her on the news and reached out, offering a coffee meeting, a partnership proposal, a line she never thought she'd hear. "We'd be lucky to have you now." She stared at the email, then at the past that had once shut a door in her face, now trying to sneak back through the window. That night, Eleanor called. "You'll face this again and again," she said, her voice calm and certain. "The world will struggle to believe a girl who chose kindness could also command power. That's not your burden. That's their limitation." The next morning, Maya entered the office with a clarity that cut through the noise. She stood at the head of the conference table. confident, composed, and presented the final results of her first initiative. Over 100 women hired, 60 children placed in safe care, 5 neighborhoods uplifted by her team's work. The applause was real, unstaged, earned, and when a reporter asked, "What made you believe you were the right person to lead this?" she didn't flinch. "I didn't know I was," she said, "but I believed doing the right thing had value, even when it cost me. That's how I started, and that's how I'll lead." The room stood still, and then someone clapped, and then another, until the space thundered with respect, not just for what she had done, but for who she had remained. Maya didn't fight the critics. She outran them. Not with rage, not with rebuttals, but with results. She didn't prove them wrong. She made them irrelevant. And somewhere deep inside, she realized she had passed the real test. Not just the test of opportunity, but the test of self. Could she remain whole in a world that profits off people breaking? The answer, clear as ever, was yes. The seasons turned, and with them, so did Maya's world. No longer the girl racing down cracked sidewalks chasing the hope of survival, but a woman now guiding others toward a future they once believed was too far to reach. She walked through the halls of the foundation, not as an intern or a protege, but as a leader, now directing her own branch of programs designed for underrepresented youth, her name on the door, her voice in boardrooms that once wouldn't have let her past reception, but she hadn't changed in the ways that mattered. She still rose early, still carried a notebook worn with scribbled ideas, still kept a picture of Devin on her desk to remind her why this all mattered. And on a warm spring morning, while overseeing a job fair for young applicants, she saw her past staring back at her. A teenage girl in oversized clothes and worry in her eyes, pacing alone by the registration booth, biting her nails and glancing at the clock like the world might collapse if she missed something. Maya approached her gently, years of memory rising like a tide. "First interview?" she asked. The girl nodded, startled, eyes wide. "Yeah, but I think I'm late. I stopped to help this little kid who fell outside," and her voice trailed off, guilt shadowing her face. Maya didn't answer immediately. She just smiled, the kind of smile that knew exactly what it felt like to trade certainty for compassion. "You're not late," she said softly. "You're right on time." And she walked the girl to the interview table herself, staying just long enough to see her nerves settle before moving on. Because that's who she was now. Not just a story of survival, but a living bridge for others. Later that evening, Maya visited the small apartment she once called home. Now renovated and part of a low-income housing program she helped design. Devin, taller now, healthy and bright-eyed, met her with open arms. They sat on the old couch, laughing over tea, the kind of peace they used to only dream about. And as the city outside shimmered with nightfall, Maya looked out at the streets that once broke her and then built her, and thought not of the awards on her office wall, or the speeches she'd given, or even the viral video that started it all. But of that one moment, that single second when she could have walked past a stranger and didn't, because it was never about the job she missed. It was always about the life she found. The auditorium was filled with light, not just from the soft glow of chandeliers overhead, but from the faces of every young man and woman seated in rows, dressed in second-hand suits and borrowed dresses, hands folded nervously on their laps, eyes wide with the kind of hope Maya remembered like muscle memory. This was the first graduating class of the Sterling Future Initiative, and tonight, Maya was not just their mentor. She was their example, their proof that the world could bend in their favor if they stood tall enough. As she stepped onto the stage, the room quieted instantly, breaths held, hearts open, and for a moment, she stood in the silence, letting it wrap around her like a soft armor, remembering the sidewalk, the pain, the missed interview, the woman's frail voice calling her kind, and all the invisible threads that had led her here. Then she began, not with a rehearsed speech or formal greeting, but with a truth as raw as her journey. "I once missed the most important meeting of my life," she said, voice steady but full, "because someone needed help, and I didn't look away. The audience didn't move. as if afraid that even the air might interrupt her. That moment cost me a job, but it gave me a purpose. It gave me a path. It gave me all of you. She told them the story. Not the headlines, not the polished version, but the real one, about fear and sacrifice and how sometimes kindness feels like a mistake until it becomes your redemption. She ended with a single sentence, one that hung in the room like a final heartbeat before the thunder of applause. Sometimes the moment that pulls you off your path is the one that sets you free. As she stepped down, students reached for her hands, their eyes shining not because she had made it, but because she had never stopped reaching back. And later that night, as she walked alone through the quiet city streets, past the bus stop where she once cried, past the tower she once stared at from the outside, she paused at the very crosswalk where it all began. The pavement hadn't changed. The city hadn't noticed. But Maya had. And somewhere in the distance, laughter echoed. Life moved forward. And the stars blinked down like tiny reminders that every small act reverberates. She looked up, closed her eyes, and smiled, not because she had won, but because she had chosen, and because that choice had built 1,000 doors for others to walk through. She thought she had lost everything when she gave up that interview to help a stranger, but what she didn't know was that the world was watching. Now ask yourself, if it were you, rushing toward your future, would you stop or would you walk past the one moment that could define everything? Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you lose when you help, okay? It's what you become when you don't.